Hello and welcome back to Music Theory with Mr. Teachey, where today we are going to meet three new cadences. Now, cadences we've talked about before. We've learned about the authentic cadence, we've learned about the half cadence, we've learned about the full cadence, and we've talked a little bit about the deceptive cadence when we were learning about the sixth chord, the submediant chord. Now, if none of that sounds familiar, then you probably need to go back and rewatch some of the older lessons, the ones on cadences and the one on the sixth chord, which was fairly recent. And once you do that, come back and this stuff will make a whole lot more sense. But anyway, today we're going to learn about the Plagal Cadence, the Phrygian half cadence, and the Deceptive Cadence. And again, that's something that we've already talked about, so this will be mostly to jog your memory on that particular cadence. Let's jump right in. The Plagal Cadence uses a 4 chord in place of our usual dominant chord, generally the 5 chord. So the Plagal Cadence is here mostly for the purpose of softening a cadence. Now the 5-1 is a big dramatic moment. What if you don't want that dramatic moment? Well, try 4-1. Now you can do this in major, that's where you have a major 4 leading to a major 1. You can also do it in minor, where both of these chords are minor chords. So let's take a look at this example in C major. Now the 4 chord in C is F, so we've got an F chord moving to a C chord, and that's our 4-1 motion. Notice that we have a common tone here. You should be able to build a common tone in anytime you're moving from 4 to 1, because the 4 chord, the chordal fifth of the 4 chord, is scale degree 1. And you have a scale degree 1 obviously in your tonic chord. So moving from 4 to 1, you should be able to keep scale degree 1 as a common tone between those two chords. So we have that here in our C, that is in our F chord, being held over as a doubled C in our tonic chord. Now, in these in any chord progression, you want to avoid your parallel fifths, you want to avoid your parallel octaves, and we've done that here. We do have similar motion between our soprano and our bass, but it's only similar motion. It is not parallel motion, and the parallel motion that we do have between our F and our A here, moving to our E and our G, is in our thirds. So parallel motion in thirds, totally fine. Parallel motion in fifths and octaves, something that you need to avoid. And of course we have our common tone here, C to C. So great. Next cadence, the Phrygian half cadence. Now this one is a first inversion 4 chord leading to a 5 chord, a dominant chord. And this only happens in minor. You don't have a Phrygian half cadence in major. So you only have to learn one type of the Phrygian cadence. It is just in minor. So let's have a look at our Phrygian half cadence example. We are again in the key area of no sharps, no flats. So if we're in major, then that's C major, but the relative minor of that is A minor. That should be pretty familiar to us at this point. So we are working in A minor. We have a D chord, a D minor chord in first inversion. So our bass needs to be an F. And that's what we've got. We've got an F in the bass. We've got a D in the tenor. We've got a D doubled in the alto. And then we've got our A in the soprano. Now, the thing to be on the lookout for here, anytime you're going from a 4 chord to a 5 chord, got to be on the lookout for parallel motion. In this case, we don't have to worry quite as much about it because we are in a first inversion 4 chord. So that is handy because we know that our bass is going to be moving down by step, and then some of our other voices can be moving up because, you know, we're going from 4 to 5. So in this case, what we've done is we've got an interval of a perfect fifth in the 4 chord that proceeds to an interval of a third in our 5 chord. So that avoids the parallel motion that you might have otherwise had between the notes of this perfect fifth. So that's good. And then in our other D here, we have that moving down by a third. So we avoid a parallel motion between this D and this A. So that's nice. That's similar motion, but similar motion is okay. Especially if we end up with some nice doubling here, which we do have. We've got two E's, a G sharp, and a B. Voice leading wise, this is fine. Now our deceptive cadence, this should look like an old friend to us since we've already talked about the deceptive cadence. This can happen in major or in minor. In major, you're going from a dominant chord to your minor sixth triad. And then in minor key areas, you're going from a dominant chord to your major sixth triad. So here's an example in minor. We have a regular five chord, a regular five triad. We've doubled our E, and we are proceeding to a sixth chord. We're going from a sort of open configuration in each of these staves to a more closed configuration, and it works nicely where we have our E moving up to an F here, and then we've got our E moving down to a C here. Then we've got our G sharp moving up to an A. That is where you would normally want your G sharp to resolve when you're in A minor, so it's good that our G sharp is moving up by step. That's kind of how you have to do it. And then our B here is moving down to an A as well. So we've got 2 moving down to 1. We've got 7 moving up to 1. We've got 5 moving down to 3. And then we've got another 5 moving up to 6. Now the best way of practicing these is just going into your music notation software or playing around with your keyboard or whatever instrument you have around and just experimenting with these, spelling these chords out as you play and hearing them resolve wherever they are headed using these predominant function chords in a sort of creative way. Another thing you can do for the Plagal Cadence especially is when you play that, that's going to sound like some music to you. When I hear the Plagal Cadence, the first thing I think of is dueling banjos, which really features a pretty prominent Plagal Cadence in the da-da-da-bum-bum. That sound is just glued in the back of my head. If that's not familiar to you, find another example that is familiar to you. And when you hear these things, you'll be able to pick them out right away. Now, of course, when you see it spelled out, that should also be familiar to you. But the more this is in your brain in multiple modalities, whether you're seeing it written, whether you can feel it as you imagine yourself playing these things, or if you have a sound cue that immediately says Plagal Cadence to you, that's how you make progress with this stuff. So go ahead, get started, do some practicing, do some playing around, and we will see you next time for a discussion of 6/4 chords, which will be a lot of work but a lot of fun. See you then.